Hello, YouTube. I'm Aaron from Lone Star Drift, and without being humble, explain who you are over there.
Uh, without being humble. So my name is Dave Egan from a drift lifestyle channel called Drift Games in Ireland, and I also am the vice president of Drift Masters, amongst other weird jobs around the drift world.
All right. Well, you came on Driftweek 4 with us, and you had a bit of a problem and everything, and only saw a teeny tiny bit of it. And what I'm doing right now is I'm calling up some fun international people and just chatting about Driftweek 5 because I'm excited about it right now. We talked to Luke Fink, who I'm sure you know. He's
Yep.
crazy. He should spice things up on Driftweek 5, along with another Aussie that he's bringing. Luke is buying a Corvette from me, and he has to go get the thing caged and everything. What are you going to drive on Drift Week? What are your plans? Like, tell me how you get over here. Tell me, how do you prep for something like this? I don't know. I have no idea. I'm on
So
the inside
yeah,
of this. I don't see your point of view.
no, so basically, we haven't prepped everything yet. So what we first decide is, are we going to do it? Because we do it as a company, not an individual. So we got to like work out what it's worth for us in terms of content, in terms of how much fun we can have at it, or how much experience we gain from it. So we definitely, from the first drift week, even though I was only on the very end of the drift week, the guys had a blast. They loved it. The content was great. We enjoyed it. So we're going to do it again. We're going to do it because we know now that if it was the exact same drift week, it might be tough for us to justify doing two back to back. But because
Mhm.
it's a different part of the country, it's new tracks, it's new people, it's new experiences. So I'm pumped on that. We don't know what car we're driving yet. It won't be the E46 M3 that we had the last time, because I
Mhm.
said to Duarte and Drift HQ, who we rent the cars from, that it was too mundane. It was just very normal looking. So I said, if we've only one car to take photos off for 2 weeks, it was pretty ordinary. So as
Mhm.
I said, I want something that looks like it shouldn't be driving around on the road, something a little wilder. So we're working on something. It could be a Corvette. It could be, I'm not sure. We've got a couple of cars as an option, and we're definitely going to do some crazy liveries and stuff to make it a bit more, I don't know, photogenic for the trip, and something that's reliable. So this trip, I'll be driving. Adam won't be here. He's doing some other events for us. Josh will be here, but he'll be shooting, not driving. So we're hoping to get videos up like every day from our adventures. So that's the plan. We're looking forward to it. Really looking forward to it. In fact, it's been so cold and miserable in Ireland for the last like 2 months that we just can't wait to get back out of the country again for a while.
Mhm. Um, the event is April 15th through the 27th on the East Coast. Is that too close? There's so much prep to do. Like, you guys don't have a car chosen. I don't know if Drift HQ even has a Corvette that's caged right now. Like, they would have to prep it, cage it, transport it. That's a lot of work in like less than 60, 70 days. But there's a lot of guys. I think we're trying to buy 4 Corvettes for foreigners right now, plus one Mustang. All those cars need to be caged and stuff, and everybody's like, "Yeah, no problem, we got this." It's so
I
close.
think where there's a will, there's a way, right?
Hmm.
I'm just, that date for me is like I'm in Abu Dhabi. I fly straight from Abu Dhabi to Washington, and then I fly straight back to the first round of Drift Masters, if I'm not mistaken, on my calendar. So it's going to be a pretty tight 2 weeks to get everything done. But that's part of it. It's part of the fun.
Hmm.
One thing that we're lucky with is that Drift HQ handle a lot of that stuff for us. So they'll have the car prepared, and we'll talk with them. Actually, I'm talking with Duarte on Friday about what we're going to do with it, make a plan. For me, it's just about getting there and not breaking the car for the week and a half, and then hopefully not doing too much damage, and then heading back to other events. So we fly in, we sort of arrive and drive, which is a very different approach to a lot of the guys from the States that are doing it. But it's the only way we really can do it, because obviously we can't, if we wanted to ship a car from Ireland or whatever, we have to do carnets, and it would take like 8 months or whatever it is to get through all the customs. So it's the only way of realistically doing it. And it's great that Drift HQ are providing that service now, that they can allow people, not for everybody, but for select people, to come and rent stuff out and enjoy Drift Week. So it worked so well the last time. I don't think there's any point in changing the recipe for this one.
Was it really turnkey where you guys just showed up and the car worked and there was no big issues? I mean,
Yeah,
of
pretty
course,
much.
a drift car breaks and stuff, but it was that easy.
But even the stuff that broke wasn't like, it was very like small. It looked more dramatic, which
It
I
was
said
silly
I wasn't.
stuff.
It looks like, oh, the wheel came off. It's like the wheel nuts. And oh, the car stopped on track, the brakes got stuck on, or the door got hit, but it's an E46 door, so it's like the cheapest door on earth. So I was
Hmm.
like, all the things that Josh managed to break in the car were very easily fixed. They looked more dramatic than they were, which was good for our video content, but they were
Mhm.
actually fine. The car survived the whole thing, and even I think it was Hurt that took it to the event that you won in the LZ Invitational, and he had the same car, and then
No,
the
I think it's
wheels.
a different car because that
Was
was
that
a
a different
V8
car?
car. Yeah, it was a
Oh, it's
four
a
door,
different
I
car.
think.
That had a wheel come off too, so I was like, it happens, you know.
Oh,
So
yeah, Hurt is so
I
hard
think
on
like
cars. He's
that
built to
car,
muscles.
even if we had to take that car again, I wouldn't be too upset with it. I just feel maybe something a little different, just for a little different challenge. That's all, and a little different visual. Obviously, doing the event again.
Yeah, from a content perspective and stuff, what would you like to see different with Drift Week? Because these are going to be faster tracks, and I guess you weren't even on the last one.
No, but I watched everything. I could see a lot of what the guys were doing. I think, um, yeah, to be honest with you, the last one was perfect. It was just, I think, from the perspective of what I had done, I sent the boys there. Adam had like 20 hours notice to go, so there was not much prep. I think with Josh driving and Adam driving and trying to film it and everything at the same time, it was just so difficult for them to be able to pull content out. So I think this time, because Josh has already done it, he's like, right, well, I'll film it and put the edits out, you drive it. Therefore, it's a much easier thing for us, right from the off. Now, whether Adam may still come, I don't know, but
Mhm.
we'll just push content daily and try and like not have a big backlog of content that Drift Week's over and we're starting to release episode 3, so I want to get it a bit more live, because people back, especially in Ireland or Europe, are very interested in how we got on, and you want to be kind of live with the content. The way the world is now, they don't care how long it takes to edit or what you have to do or how late you have to stay up. You just have
They
to get
want
it
it
done,
done.
get it out. So that's very much what will change. We'll be a bit more live, I think.
What was the reaction from foreigners? I guess your people over there, locals, but the people in Ireland and the people in England and all over the place, what did they think of your content and what you were doing?
They loved it. I think the difference is that it's almost like a journey. Okay, so say someone goes on a travel vlog or blog,
Hmm.
it's like that with drifting. So it's down their street. They get to experience it from. People from the States are not going to go, oh wow, look at this thing that I see every day. So from our perspective, coming in from outside, we were able to say, this is the price of gas, this is how hot it is, this is stuff that's totally unique to us. You know, we were saying it's funny, like how you would never comment on the weather. Like in LA, no one would ever comment on the weather, whereas in Ireland, it's like, oh, what a great day! It's not raining. So
Yeah.
difference of that, and also one of the big things is we got to introduce ourselves to new people, and obviously that's the point of Drift Week, to mingle with other people and have good conversations. And I think that's what it was nice for our audience to see us meet new people, go there, have an adventure. The adventure started a bit more dramatically than we wanted to, with me being stuck at home and flying in and everything. But I think from most of our perspective, it also led to the relationships that we gained with Duarte, and as a result, meeting Adam, and then, videos with those guys having big impacts on our channel. So it was great from a publicity point of view, just to mix around with those guys, and also for people back home to see us mix around, because that's two different worlds for them. They know us and they know our world, and then they see the other world, which is the Adam LZs and the Chelsea Denofas, and all these guys are totally separate. And then to kind of see them all cross over was very cool for them. So I think that's a big thing of Drift Week, is the collaboration between people from different walks of life and different parts of the world, which you wouldn't see on anything else.
Was there any like thing that was culture shock for you? Like you mentioned, the fuel. Was the fuel expensive or cheap? It was crazy expensive for a Texan. We were paying upwards of $6 for diesel sometimes, and we were used to, in the last couple of years in Texas, paying around the $2 something mark. And just recently, it got up to like 3.30, I think, and that's super high for us. The $6 thing was crazy.
Yeah, I think in Ireland it's $18 a gallon, so we don't really have to worry about that too
What?
much. Or something.
Holy
It's
cow!
something ridiculous like that. We do it by the liter, which is even less value. Our fuel is very expensive here, so I think it's actually cheaper in every way, shape, and form to drift in America. That's the first thing that I noticed, because I looked at the price of everything across everything, and tires are tires and fuel is fuel and whatever, rental is rental. But what I looked at mostly was the track rentals, or even the cost of Drift Week itself, and even the Airbnbs and things like that, very reasonably priced compared to certain areas of Europe, or, track days in Europe. Like if you were to do Drift Week in Europe, which, as I said before, would be very hard to do, the cost that it would be to a driver to do 10 days of drifting would be like, geez, I don't even know, be like €7,000, $10,000 maybe, or something like that, something ridiculous. So it's not
You
as
mean
a
just for
cheap,
the entry fee?
just to rent the track, yeah.
Yeah, per person.
Per person, yeah.
Okay.
So like it would be insane because you're renting actual. I'm not saying they're not actual racetracks that you guys use, but
Yeah.
they're kind of hobbyist tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas here, it's either it doesn't exist or it's Silverstone. So everything's either a very professional race circuit. We have one race circuit in Mondello Park in Ireland, and then everything else is just tiny and a go-kart like a tiny go-kart track. So it's a very big culture shock that for me that there's tracks that people just go, yeah, on a Thursday you can go drifting there and just look after yourself, take your own car out of the gravel. All that stuff would never exist here. Like sort of left to your own devices, it wouldn't happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are very lucky about that. You've been to Japan and stuff too, right?
Yeah.
I was going to say it's very much even another level of that where they don't even have track workers in Japan.
Yeah.
You're at Ebisu or you're a lot of these places and you're like, is there not one adult like watching? Like if I flip a car, what do? They're like, get out of your car and march up the hill and go find somebody to go get a forklift and like, or just push it over with your friends. Like, don't bother us. You're
Yeah,
just
it's
like,
it's
oh my
it's
God, there's no
in Europe
adults.
that just doesn't happen. I mean, every track is briefings, and you have to have it. Like in our track, even if you have we were just joking about this the other day. We have a school there, so there's guys in 350Zs in second gear in a massive open area where they can't hit anything, and you still have to have an ambulance there, by
Mm-hmm.
law in case something happens. And no, like it's just so over the top health and safety in Europe compared to, say, I would say America. Japan seems to be more like do what you want, but there's lots of health and safety, but not a drifting. It's just like, oh well, whatever happens happens. But I think that's one thing that it's such a culture shock for us. I think also the biggest culture shock for me was the fact that everyone can drive their drift cars on the road. I mentioned that to so many people, that how illegal they would, like police officers here would fall over in laughter looking at you trying to drive along in those cars. Like the guy with the pickup truck, the Haggard Garage, is that it? Like that, it's not a hope that thing would ever drive on the road in Ireland the way it is, or any of those trucks or anything like that. So that's a real novelty for us that we can see those things on the road. We went to Florida afterwards, and like you're just seeing some trucks on the road. You're like, this truck is literally broken in half, and people are just driving around in it. But that just wouldn't happen here. So that's a culture shock for us. And again, I think that's the thing. We like the difference, like it's nice seeing different things. And we got a bad feeling coming home going, you guys have it good in some areas with fuel, open tracks, and definitely driving your drift car on the road is like something we would love to do here.
Mm-hmm. Did you know that pickup truck is a Corvette?
Yeah, no, as I
Okay.
said, I went
I
through
was
the
just
whole
laughing at
bill,
that. You're like,
but I was
so
like,
weird.
even swap a chassis from one thing, like here, you would have to take that to a test center, and they'd be like, what? This is not a Corvette. Like, what have you done here? So they would just like, you're not even allowed modify, the steering wheel or stuff like that here. So it's like, if they were seeing an entire chassis swap, they would just fall over on the ground and say, do never come back here again. So that to me is that freedom. I know it's a very American thing, but that freedom of being able to, I know it's not the same everywhere, and California is a little worse, and some areas are a little worse, but that to me was like mind-blowing, that we could just drive this drift car all day and then on the road, and then if there's a window gone or a door broken, who cares, it's fine. So that was cool.
I kind of got the Driftweek idea after going to Ebisu a bunch of times and seeing how different drifting could be, because I'd been hosting drift events since like 2003 and everything became very stagnant. I had a concept of what a drift event would be, and I'd make very little changes, like deleting qualifying so we didn't have to sit through that, or like making my Texas Street Legal rule book, or like very little things. And not until I went to Ebisu, like I changed my mind drastically and started doing like hot lap type tracks and lots of different things. And then Driftweek was like a derivative of that. Do you come and see Driftweek, or like you travel the world almost more than anyone, especially on like the hosting side? What do you think is going to be like the next thing in 5 years? Because you had style type of events, which is kind of a copy off of a lot of stuff in Japan because they were doing style type of events. You have competition based stuff, you have grassroots stuff, you have Matsuri stuff, you have all these different versions of drifting. What do you think the next thing, like as an event host for yourself, do you want to just do less competition stuff and more grassroots stuff? I remember Gap Bill has been around forever, and that really changed like our perception of what drifting could be too, which is just a party, like with media based off of it, to blow it up and to have like big drivers and bands come over, and it could be bigger than a competition series that way. And I mean, there's a bunch of problems with that and everything, but anyways, what do you think? about
I
like the
think
next cool wave?
it's funny because I stopped doing competitive drifting in Ireland maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago
Hmm.
now, maybe. The pandemic doesn't count. So 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was. Um, and I started doing these bash events in Mondello Park. And we just had one at the weekend. And what I noticed is that you would do a competition event and it's so much more work because you've got to have, live stream and everything has to be set up and branding and towers and judges and blah, 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 and loads of staff and everything running to a T. And at the end of the event, as much as a fan might go home and say, oh, that was good fun. Um, there was always a separation between the fan and the driver. So the driver was performing, the fan is in the grandstand, and that's fine. At the end of the event, one guy wins, the rest are all really pissed off that their weekend didn't go as they wanted to. And then at the end of that, the fan kind of goes home separate to the driver. Whereas we did these bash events and we did like 150, 200 passenger runs at the weekend. And the fan comes, he still gets to see drifting, but he gets to get in the car, he gets to meet the driver, he gets to party and have a few drinks and make a fool of himself and talk shit to the driver about his car and whatever for the night. And I think it's a much more relatable thing. And spectator wise, we're starting to see the spectators grow massively at these events as opposed to without a whole lot of work that we're doing compared to how much work we would have to put in a competitive event. I think competitive events work at the very highest level because you have a spectacle. But
Hmm.
in a national series, sometimes it can just be a competitive event for a competitive event's sake. And I think what fun events for me are there's more you can do because you're not like think about it from a competition format. What do you change? Like, what can you change? It's going to have to be a 32, a top 16, somehow qualifying, maybe not qualifying, whatever. But in the end, it's kind of the same thing that runs to the end. Whereas if you wanted to do a drift limbo and then somebody did a shot and then someone fell over and then you put them in a bar and then if you wanted to have 4-car battles of 3-car trains, whatever you want, you've such a freedom to do fun stuff at an event like that. And I don't think it makes less money for the organizer, and I think it's more value for the driver who can drive for 2 days straight rather than just get knocked out by 11 a.m. and sit around for the day packing up. So the fun events, I think, at national level work really well. I think the competitive level, I'd say European, US, full on level probably work quite well. I think you're going to find the middle ground fall away. That's what I think is going to happen with drifting. I think the middle ground of drifting, it's going to either be really fun and stylish and cool or super professional. I think the middle ground is kind of people get stuck in there where they build a really high horsepower car for competition, but then they don't really want to do competition because they don't do much driving. Then it's too expensive to run for the fun competition and they kind of get stuck in the middle. So I think you'll see that split of really stylish 300 horsepower cars that are built to smash all day, and then the super high competitive stuff, and everything in the middle will be kind of not good for either, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
It's my opinion.
Definitely. I was going to say there's a bunch of other things to think about on that, but I could go on forever. But just
Yeah.
like to put in just a quick thought, um, without you throwing competition events in Ireland, Ireland probably would have never been put on the map. And like James Dean wouldn't have been put on the map. And there's a lot of hero building that you can do in a
Yeah.
competition series that might not happen in the same way. Um,
I would agree,
without
but
doing
then
them.
think
So it's
of it
kind
the
of
other
like
way
up and
that
down. There's lots of different like things to think about.
I think I definitely
Give and
wouldn't
take.
take like James Dean wouldn't I would have no credit for James Dean. James Dean would have been big no matter what. But what I would say is that some of those drivers, yes, like maybe Dwayne McKeever, the Shanahans, and those guys that we did build
Yeah.
through that series went on to do great things. You do need it, but it's also a very difficult. I understand at the moment because Irish drifting is in a little bit of difficulty because obviously it's difficult with the size of the country and the financing and everything coming out of the pandemic. But the problem you have is that some people want to go to the top and some people don't, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think the reason that competitive drifting was so successful in Ireland because it was the only outlet. Like you had to do that, and that was it. Whereas now that there's more of an option of this fun side, which probably didn't exist before, a lot of guys are choosing that. The only thing is, I do think that what suffers with the fun side is the car builds become a little shitter because everyone is like, all the cost of S bodies and stuff has gone crazy. So like it's just 80% E46 BMWs that are just crashed up, and you're like, it's probably not as nice looking for drifting in the long run because if someone from a spectator point of view, they want to see the high powered stuff, they want to see the cool cars, and there's not as many of those at the fun days as there would be at the little bit more variety in the States. But here, it's just E46 BMW is pretty much
What
E92
comes
BMW.
next for you guys after that? Because Japan 5 years ago, it was really cheap JZXs and they had piles of them. Then
Yeah.
they worked through those. Seems like in your region of the world, those E46s are going to be a small timeline because they're going to be thrown off the roads because of Euro regulations and taxes and whatever else goes on in your specific country. And they get shipped out to Poland or something like that, or whatever reason. Um, and you guys just aren't going to have those things as an option very long. Is that accurate? Is it going to be just, or do you
No,
think
I
you're going
think
to
I
have
think it
those
was like
forever?
it was so funny. The E36 BMW was like you could buy one for. I remember buying one for a drift event for £200 in the UK, and I
Hmm.
gave the guy back the taillights and the headlights, and he gave me back £200. So I was like, those days, literally the car stood me nothing, and I left it there as if it wasn't standing me anything. There was a lot of events in Ireland and the UK where they would have like bash events or like really really rough cars would crash into each other all day, twinning all day to the point that the cars didn't survive.
Hmm.
Nobody took that much pride in their car. It was just about doing a job for the day, and then if it got left there, that's fine. So a lot of E36s and E46s were killed doing that, and now we're seeing a problem with E46s are going to eventually creep up. Now, really funny here, like the Lexus IS 200, which is the worst version of the Lexus IS 300. We joke about it. It's now like it's getting like 7 to 10,000 euro car here. It's a 2 liter with 140 horsepower, and they're starting to grow in price. That it's like these were the cheapest car you could get as a young person, rear wheel drive or whatever, for doing donuts, and now you can't get anything. So I think Ireland is got a bigger problem than the rest of the world because one, we're super green here. Like the whole country is about being eco-friendly and blah blah blah. And the power, one of the government members is the Green Party, so they want to get rid of everything. They want us to share cars now, and all, like I'm sure in Texas this will go down a treat. But I was like, share cars, cycle everywhere, electric vehicles, blah blah blah. So I don't think the car as such in Ireland won't be the stronghold because of just political power, and we're too small a country to have too many people to fight it, if that makes sense. So I think UK will stay, okay. They still have a lot of cool cars, the Middle East, some of that, but like Ireland will go the way of Holland, Belgium, Germany, those countries, which are all very eco-friendly, non-offensive. Drifting to them is like there isn't, if I'm not mistaken, this sounds crazy, but there's no drift championship in Holland, Belgium, Germany, like all these different countries, Switzerland, Austria. Like just it's crazy. There's like maybe, I don't know, maybe 10 national championships in the whole of Europe, like which is out of maybe 40 countries. So it's like a lot of those countries have already outlawed a lot of the stuff that drifting is doing. So I think I'm right. We're riding the wave here as long as it'll go. And then at some point, I think you'll have the hardcore enthusiasts and the hardcore competitive drifters. And that's probably about it. Everything else will be too much grief. Drifting will be too much grief for other people. But at the moment, we're still getting 150 drivers to each one of these events 4 times a year. And they're having a good time. So I don't know how long it'll last or how long the racetrack can get away with running it. But I suppose is not the case with everything right now. You just kind of run it till the wheels fall off and see. Then you make up what you're going to do then at the end of that.
Um, you're going to try and build a compound and do all these different things and build a business, the YouTube channel, everything off of drifting right now. But you think that drifting is going to be dead in Ireland within 5 to 10 years? How are you
I
going to
think
base a business off that and like make it
I
all
don't think
work?
it's I don't think it's exactly drifting that we're trying to base our business off. I think what
Mhm.
we're looking at is, so there's, if you look at all the car, there's a big car scene in Ireland, all the car enthusiasts, and they don't. What's going to happen as time goes on is, I mean, this, it sounds like we're making a compound, but really what we want to make is an arc. So it's somewhere people can go and enjoy these cars, and it's sort of like a sanctuary for people to meet up and talk about these cars and have a passion for them, which they always
Mhm.
will, irregardless. But it's a case of, is it like the large scale race circuits aren't going to be able to support that because they're going to be too expensive. So we said if we got a smaller place that was a little bit more attainable, the community would have a home for, well, I mean, not a home every day, but a home for events and, small gatherings and things like that, where it's not illegal. Where in Ireland at the moment, if you were to go to a car meet in a car park, it's illegal. You're not, it's same in the US, you're not
Really?
allowed. Well, it's not, yeah, it's not really, you're on private property. That's what they would say.
Oh
So,
yeah, they totally do it in Texas, like probably 4 nights a week or something in the DFW area.
So here
And
they
they'll
can't.
have some hundreds and hundreds of cars too.
Yeah, that wouldn't happen here. I mean, they'd be there, and then the police will come and they'll tell them this is private property. You're not allowed to be here, even if it's a shopping mall or whatever. But this was my idea: was not to have it as a wild, Fast and the Furious kind of thing, but was more like a high end car enthusiast space where you could come, chill out, have a coffee, chat with people, play games. Discuss car parts, swap car parts, have swap meets, things like that. And it would just be more for a place for us to make content, which would obviously bring the content to us because all the cars that we want to feature would come to us, and they would have an ability to do burnouts and drifting and stuff, not all day, every day, but they would have that element, a bit like the Hoonigan Barnyard. You have that
Mm-hmm.
ability to create content there. And then at the same time, our business will be based on a drift school there. The drift school is actually really easy to run because it's quiet and it doesn't make smoke. And we want to also have a sprinkler system in this area so that if we want to have drifting that's quieter, that just people, whatever, we can. And that's the kind of idea behind it. So it's more like it facilitates our school, it facilitates our content, it facilitates our storage of our cars. And then it also brings the content to us and is a home for, like, say, car meets, small drift meets, that kind of stuff. Small groups want to just have fun or whatever. That's kind of the idea. So it's not like a huge overhead place. I think a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
think that this is going to be like Silverstone that we're building for 200 million for drifting. I've always said it's going to be quite a simple, cool place, a bit like the Barnyard, a bit bigger than that, and just be like a fun place to hang out. So it's not as crazy as it sounds.
Okay. Still sounds kind of crazy in some ways. It's a big, how do you say, investment for something that we're not so sure will really be a thing in 5 years. Kids don't care about cars now, like all these different things
Yeah.
cascading. If you extrapolate out where you're going to be in 10 years, you're going to be, how old are you? 30 something?
37.
Yeah, you'll be nearly 50 years old, like working at this building while kids are doing burnouts. And you're like, it's $20 to do a burnout. Give me my money. It'll be
Yeah.
very,
I'm hoping.
very,
I'm hoping I'll have passed that on to the younger boys that work for us, and
yeah.
they'll all be
But you know what I
super
mean? I
pumped
always
up.
just think about how this stuff will work because this is a long term idea. It's not something you can pull off super fast. But you consistently pull off big ideas that have very large budgets. So I'm like confident
I,
you can do it.
I always say that unless you jump all the way in, like you'll never swim as hard as when you jump into the middle of the deep end.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's the bit where you need the fear, when you get in there and you start getting really like, oh my God, we got to get ourselves out. That's when you start getting really creative. That's when you're sharp. That's when I find, and I don't know if you know, but if you're doing an event a long time and you know how easy it is to run that event, you do get a little complacent about it. You start going, oh, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And then you start to realize it's losing its spark a little bit because you haven't spent that much time on it. So I've always been like, jump in, like I exclusively, I was only having a conversation about this the other day about Drift Masters this year and tarmacking another stadium. And I was like, oh, well, like we have to sell this amount of tickets or whatever. And I was like, yep, it'll be fine. And I was like, and it's always been fine because if you're in deep, you've got to get out of the deep. And I think we're too long in the game to do the simple things because they don't excite us anymore. Like for me, if I have a project where I'm like, I'm building this compound and we're going to do it this, I'm so pumped on it that all
Mm-hmm.
the enthusiasm that I have in my team will make it a success. Whereas if it's kind of a, oh yeah, we'll rent a track for a day, a month or whatever, we'd be going, whatever. So it's more like, I know from a business sense that makes probably the worst sense, but it's worked for us jumping in deep and then trying to swim our way out to say as best we can. So I like that. For me,
Yeah.
I think the memories of this, I don't really care. I think that, no, it sounds really bad, but sometimes I don't really care about the failure because if you did it and you pulled it off, it's amazing. If you didn't, you gave it a good go and you can always go and do something else, whatever. But like, so far, so good. Like that with my stuff that it kind of works out somehow. Somehow I look back and go, I don't even know how that happened. I mean,
Yeah.
but we don't get me wrong, we have bills, we have all the usual financing stuff that everyone has, but I think that's the thing, just good ideas. And also in Ireland, it's a very conservative place, so if you have a crazy idea here, people generally follow what you're doing because there's not that many people having those ideas, so you do get a good audience for that.
Yeah. I'm currently looking for some, like, such as yourself, Luke Fink, really good drivers. Who should I bring over? Like, who should we invite, or who wants to come drive, or how should I go headhunt people to keep drifting or like Drift Weeks exciting?
I'll put it this way: you didn't hear it from me in this public forum, but I did know that once we came back, James Dean was very interested in doing it, and his girlfriend Becky Evans, who was another
Hmm.
YouTuber. So obviously having James there would be very good fun because you can see how the extremities of it. Secondly, I think from Europe, if you look at, there's so many good characters across Europe. One guy that springs to mind is Monkey London in the UK. He's a YouTuber, a
Hmm.
drifter. He's quite a good character. Like, he's quite good fun. Um, there's a lot. There's a lot of good people that have good character. As you said, it's not just about being a great driver. It's about adding a bit of spice or adding a bit of I don't know, something different to the whole trip. So I mean,
Yeah.
I would be thinking those guys would be pretty good shout. There's lots of great guys.
All right. Do you know who Monkey, or do you know Monkey London personally?
I do. I
Okay.
do.
Well, he'll be a good addition. Does he drive well?
Yeah, he does. He does. He's a sort of a, I don't know what the right way to describe him is. He's a bit like, he's London, very London, like very
Yeah.
London cockney guy. He's a YouTuber, and he's got a great, like, he wakes up in the morning full steam. Like, I've seen him at events going so crazy, cheering guys on, then he's asleep on the ground, and 10 minutes later and he's up again. It's like, it's full energy or nothing. So those kind of characters bring, I think, a bit of humor, a bit of laughs to it. So there's a lot of good guys like that. I said I can't think off the top of my head, but as I always say, if you want to bring someone just for your highlight reel driving, James
Mhm.
and Luke Fink on a track alone would be enough, I think, for that, for everyone to turn around and go. Like, if you had Chelsea, Luke Fink, and James doing 3-car tandems, I don't think anyone in the drift world would ignore that.
Mhm.
And then I think if you put it back to characters, there's some good characters from UK and stuff like that are quite good at that kind of stuff. I think Adam Ivel, Monkey London, those guys would all be good drifter guys that are quite funny.
Okay. As someone that's good at building suspense, should I say if I know these people are coming?
Well,
Or
no,
I guess, go ahead.
it depends. I mean, at the end of the day, for you, it's a different thing because you're not charging um anybody to, like, you're not really having a show, right? So if you have a
Hmm.
show and you're trying to sell tickets, you're obviously going to bring everybody there. But if you're not having a show and it's a road trip, then you obviously want everyone to be interested in it. So you should probably let the cat out of the bag as early as possible, because people will then build up that they want to see the content from it. So it's difficult to know. But
Yeah.
I'm a guy who, yeah, if it was a show, I'd release a bit of suspense on it. If it was like, if it was like one of my fun
Mm.
events, I'd just say they're coming.
Okay. Because I was gonna say Monkey London got an invite from ECU Master, my buddy here, Zach Denny. He's gonna lend him a car, and Monkey London just has to figure out all of his logistics and stuff.
Yeah.
But that also normally falls apart in the logistical phase for a lot of these like mid-tier
Uh,
YouTubers because they
yeah.
have a hard time making everything work. You know what I mean? It's a lot of struggle. But someone was gonna lend him a car. Um, and
He's a good
then
dude, Kobe.
James Dean, I think that's all locked in the bag already. So
I would say, like, James spoke to me about it, and I always say, if James wants to do something, someone
yeah,
will make it work somewhere. I was like, it's very
yeah.
rare for him.
Well, I
So,
think
like,
it's
James,
already. I don't want to explain it all, but yeah, I think that's all locked in already and done.
yeah, I think
So
it's
that'll
funny
be
for us.
exciting.
Yeah, very much so. And
Oh, also not for this Drift Week, by the way, for James, but Monkey
yeah,
London, yeah.
yeah. So I think that, like, those, like, I did, like, the only thing I think we did for the European side was we got a lot of people talking to us about doing it and how to do it, which I think they would have thought was an impossibility maybe before it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure if you wanted to open the doors and say to people, come do Drift Week, you'd probably get 200 people from Ireland and the UK that would want to come and do it. I don't know if that's how you want to run it. Do you want to run it as more of a top tier thing? Do you want to run it as everyone can come when, like, you could be overrun? It depends how you want to go with it. I mean, if it's the ultimate touristy kind of drift thing, then that can work too. I know in the past you've kept it quite, like, to people that are quite vetted to do it. So it's up to you. But I know a lot of people who would not be, say, you would not know who they are. They wouldn't be high, but they would have like a few quid, like, they'd have a bit of money. They would be
Yeah.
interested in doing it.
Well, the April 25th or the April 15th to 27th one, that's Drift Week 5 on the East Coast. That one kind of is going to be, if anybody was like an international person, I have some cool people from Germany, a couple, they want to do it. They don't have a big list of like accomplishments but if someone wants to come, just like you, when you meet foreigners like in another country, they had to make a pilgrimage to get there. It's a big
Yeah.
deal to them. It's a huge adventure. I think number 5 would be great for those type of people. Number 6, if James Dean comes, will again go the other way, where probably Adam and Matt Field and Chelsea and a lot of these people, Luke Fink will take up a lot of the spots, and it'll become a
Yeah.
more exclusive drift week. So that one would be really hard to get on. So each drift week has its own flavor. 1 and 2 were super hard to get on. 3 and 4 were much easier, and I think 5 will be much easier. And then 6 will be crazy hard to get on, I
Yeah.
think. One of the other problems with Drift Week is I have a rule that if you're on a previous one, you automatically get onto the next one if you want your spot. The problem with that is if I'm only doing on number 2, I upped it from 14 up to 27 spots, but almost everyone from Drift 1 took their spot back. So that means even though I increased it significantly, there was only 13 spots. And then of those 13 spots, like Colette took one because she was with Adam. And, so like friends of people took them. So there was only realistically 9 open spots. And then by the time, we get to each Drift Week, almost 70% of the spots are taken up by the previous Drift Week people. So there's not that many extra spots open most of the time. So if all those people come back for 6, you know what I mean? There won't be any spots open for anybody.
I know what you mean. It's a victim of its own success in a way that everyone wants to come back and do it, which is a good thing for you. It shows how much people love doing it. If you were getting a fresh batch of people every time, you'd be probably saying, okay, this is not that much fun for these guys. But if everyone wants to keep coming back, then it's obviously a really good thing.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier to host too, because I don't have. I mean, you missed the last one. I had some what do I call when people are shitheads and like rip down fences and stuff? I had some of those problems, like people getting out of hand. And it's typically always the new people because they know how much of it, like they did that literally on day 2 of the trip, so you're always breaking in new drivers. So that's a big disaster.
Yeah, I suppose it's the same. If you know a good chunk of the people there, that's the one good thing about competitive drifting, is that the people in the room know what the story is, and that they all know the rules. Whereas if it's, again, as I said, a free event, you don't know anybody until you know them. So as I said, you can vet everybody all you want, but how they're going to behave in that environment when the adrenaline's high and whatever is a totally different situation. So from that perspective, I do think that there was a nice respect level I saw across everybody when I was there. But I mean, it was only there for half a day or 2 days. But as I said, I'm more excited now to explore that from start to finish at the next one. That was kind of a big thing for me.
I was going to say, you also saw everyone lose their minds at the end of the trip. I mean, like people literally, I don't even know what to say, but like at Hoonigan Burnyard in the last day of the kart track at Adams, like they were so respectful for the first, 3/4 of the trip. And then the last days, they know it's over. I mean, they were literally going crazy at the Burnyard. I mean, you're just watching and you're like, I don't know what these people are doing to their cars. And,
I think they
just like had blackouts.
I think it's like a cross between exhaustion and like delirium of like just, and I mean, what I saw was a lot of guys were waiting after the Burnyard with their trailers there because they knew that was it. The car only had to survive. I think a lot of them didn't even want the car to survive. I think they were like happy enough if it broke there. So I was like, it was a good show. Like, I mean, to me, the concept of watching people doing burnouts and donuts in a very small area would like bore me after maybe 20 minutes. But that was a pretty extreme day. I was like, every run, I was like, this is getting a little bit out of hand. As this guy's taking a barrier with him, this guy's crashing into the wall. I was like, it's quite entertaining to watch. So I think it was good to leave it till the end because probably the most damage was done there. But I think that it was a really nice finish because it's also quite a cool place. I mean, that's the place you want to take the photos and you want to say you were there if you're a car fan, especially for us. Like, we being in Hoonigan was like crazy for us. We were super fanboying on everything there. So that was great.
Hoonigan is a great part to include at the end of the trip because it gets people excited the same way as when we went to the Freedom Factory. Adam wanted us to come down to the compound at the end of this drift week, but it's too far. I was like, man, we're going to be 20 hours away or something. He's like, oh, come down anyways. I'm like, that's too far. What could we do? But that would be like if it was close by, just like the Freedom Factory in Hoonigan. It's a inexpensive thing for me to add to the trip because you know how expensive it is to host a drift event. Each day is costing me at least $10,000 typically to operate this whole thing on track. So what could I do like to replicate that barnyard feeling and stuff at the end of this trip? What could we do that's nuts? That
Well, I
is
don't know where
just
you're. I don't know
immediate.
where you're going. I mean, I've agreed to do it, and I still don't know where we're going. But I would say that it's
Oh,
like,
we're going to the East Coast. We're doing 3 days at Englishtown. We start off with a party on unloading the track, like the trailers and storing the trailers at Englishtown. We then get on the Formula D track where we'll open up the bar and we'll have like illegal gambling on the drivers, and we'll do call outs and make those drivers go out
awesome.
and compete on the Formula D track for like our amusement while like the other drivers are partying and gambling on them and everything. And then that'll be private just for our guys. And then the next 2 days will be like a spectator day, 2 spectator days, and then all of us driving on the road course and the kart track for 2 days. And then we can mess around on the FD track if we want, but we have to move safety around and like shut something down. And typically everyone always wants to stay on the best like surface while we're at a facility. So they'll want to stay on the road course there because the road course is amazing. We hit up 2 days at Summit Point. So by the time we get there, there's 2 different tracks there. So we'll have already driven 5 different track surfaces, by the
Yeah.
whatever 2 venues. Pocono Raceway, which is a humongous road course that has drift track inside of it. Not like an X or anything, but like an actual road course. And Thompson, which is kind of similar.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to
Very
get a
cool.
kart track in there as well. But it starts to become like packing the schedule so much that it makes it miserable a little bit, getting
Yeah.
around and doing everything. So I'm not sure how much I want to pack the schedule. 8 days of drifting is kind of the sweet spot. We've gone up to 9 before on like, I think Driftweek 1, but it got to be a bit, much. Like by
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
end of 2 weeks, you're like, holy cow. Like some of
I
us were
think
still doing drift events on the way back. So we just kept driving. And like some of us can't ever get enough, but some people are like, okay, I've got to get back like to real
I
life.
think some people look at it like, if you get to a point where you're just sitting down in the car going, I just can't do anymore, you've
Mhm.
probably done too much drifting. So
Yeah.
I think the traveling is the adventurous part, but it's also the bit that's not as fun because you're traveling to drive. So you're driving to
Mhm.
drive. So it's a lot of driving. Like that's the thing. So it's not like you're traveling to do something else when you get there. So I think more driving and then not huge trips in between can work, especially if it's not a very scenic trip or whatever. You're going like, well, I'm just driving on the motorway for 10 hours. Great.
Yep.
Starts to feel like work. But my boys said it was pretty good. They didn't have like they said there was a few long trips, but nothing crazy. So they were happy enough. Like
On Drift Week 1 and 2, we had up to 14-hour trips between tracks. And on Drift Week 4 that your guys were on, I don't think any track changeover was more than like 6 or 7 hours. So we
yeah,
had track changeovers that were more than double the distance of what they did
I
on
think it
Drift
just gets
Week.
to the point where it's dangerous. Like people are going to be just falling asleep all over the place. But
We were on Drift Week 2, we would finish in one state at like 5 to 7 p.m., pack up, drive to the next state, and be on track at 8 a.m. in the morning. So like you wouldn't even get to the next track to sleep at the track until 2 or 3 a.m. It was crazy.
that is
We were too
nuts.
hardcore on that. Like I don't think that's good for anybody. Like we're
No, I
lucky
think
people didn't
you'll
get
do
hurt.
that. You'll do that once or twice in your life, and then you'll go,
Mhm.
yeah, that
It's
I'm just
enough.
gonna. I have enough now. I think that's what everyone does. If you especially have guys that did 1 and 2, they're
Mhm.
probably not going to want to do that again on 5 or 6 because they'll be like, "Ah, that just sounds like misery,"
Yeah.
and I want to just go have fun with my friends. So I think that works. I think also, the more time you're traveling, the less time you're socializing with people too. Like people like socializing with other drivers, and that's part of drifting is the chats and the banter and talking about your engine swaps and your bad cars. And for us, the constant talk of how much is it worth there versus how much is it worth here. That's literally
Mhm.
all we talk about is how much is an S body in Ireland versus an S body in the US versus this. So those conversations for me are a big part of it. I think they're a fun part, different perspectives on drifting. So the more traveling sometimes you do, the more road traveling, the more or less time you get to party and have a chat with someone or get to know someone. So I'm all for that. I'm also quite lazy when it comes to
Yeah.
long traveling. So, and I do a lot of it during the year, so I don't want to do it on my time off.
Are y'all's drift cars like skyrocketing in value over in Ireland right now?
Drift cars ish, yeah. Drift cars, road
Yeah.
cars, definitely. Like they're very different here
Mhm.
because if you've got a car that has the front and rear end chopped off and tube framed, it can't be on the road. So it's worth less than a car that's completely stock because it can go on the road. So that's a weird thing here.
Yeah.
Converting
We
drift cars back to road cars is now people's business.
That's crazy.
Yeah, like
I was gonna
redoing
go ahead.
like redoing like taking a tubed front and rear end and welding back in the standard front and rear end is like a thing now in Ireland.
That's so crazy. That's so much work.
Yep, but it's the
Um,
cars are. I mean, a standard S13 in Ireland, standard like SR21 with nothing done is like, I don't think you're going to get one for less than 22,000 euro, 23,000 euro.
wow. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's the
Um,
cheapest one. The cheapest one JZ I've seen, one JZ Chaser I've seen in the last maybe 3 months is about. I'd say we're at 30,000 euro now.
that's insane. I won't go back into how cheap everything used to be.
No, because I
But
often feel like you feel like an old man when you do that to the kids these days. But it's like
right.
that's just where it's at. That's where the market's at. So,
My
um,
point is we just need to start using new things, and just like we're trying to drift classic cars at some point, just
yeah.
use whatever makes sense now. I see James
The,
Dean runs like
the,
a 335i. Those were $2,000 if they
yeah.
like had any issues a few years ago. Now they're expensive. Um,
But we
I
didn't
was also
have
gonna
the we never had any V8s, so that's what killed us. We didn't have the Mustang or the Corvette or the
mhm,
Challenger or the Charger or whatever. We don't have them. So all we
mhm.
have is the European. So M3s, M4, M3s, 328s, like that's our 330s, like all BMW stuff is pretty much all we have. AMG stuff is way too expensive and automatic. So like we're kind of just stuck with like the 3 Series BMW is pretty
Yeah,
much
but
what
that's
we
not a
got.
bad car to be stuck with.
No,
Like
it's
that
not the
makes your drift
worst.
scene. They're
Yeah,
great.
it's not the worst car. Like a 328 BMW, you can thrash on it all day and
Yeah.
it'll go and it'll survive to a certain extent.
One of our problems here in Texas right now is I was just talking to one of my drivers and I sold him a Mustang like 2 years, maybe about a year ago, maybe a tiny bit longer ago than that, for $12,000. It was like a 2012 Coyote. Um, had all suspension stuff done, was a nice car, just had the interior pulled out so somebody could put a cage in it because it was like in the middle of all the build. But it was still a nice car. He put the interior back in and cut the cage out. And he was talking about not wanting to beat it up because now the car is worth $25,000 to him. And I was like, who cares how much you think it's worth? You know, like the car was a $12,000 car. At
Yeah.
$12,000, if it was continuing to depreciate, you would treat it like an absolute missile car. I mean, you still don't have $25,000 in it, but now there's a lot of drifters that have that mindset. They're like, well, I'm not going to beat this car up now. I was like, you've been beating that car up for 10 years and you never cared. That car
Yeah.
did not mean anything to you, but now that
No,
it's
I
worth
think I think
something,
once
you want to treat it completely differently. It makes me laugh.
like once people start talking about cars like they're stocks or crypto, I just like, come on,
Yeah.
it's done. I mean, a car is there for me. Don't get me wrong, I buy and sell cars and I have lots of cars and stuff, and some of them I treat more preciously than others. But I think a lot of it is that, I mean, they build memories. That's what they're for. That's the value in them. You know, you
Hmm.
buy, like as I was saying something the other day, my point in it was that you have a 20,000 euro S13 and you can't drive it anywhere because it's too precious and you want to keep it wrapped up. And especially in Ireland, you have salt on the roads and all this stuff that rusts the car. So I was like, and you don't drive it anywhere. It's worth €1,000 realistically, because if you bought €1,000 car, you drive it everywhere and you could do whatever you want with it. So I was like, it's only worth it as a monetary value. So whether you have it in that S13 or you have it in crypto or you have it in the bank, it's no different.
Hmm.
Just because you have an S13, you can't take Instagram pictures of your crypto or your savings or a big ball of cash. But I was like, it's like, you know what I mean? It's not cool. It's like the opposite of cool. Like I bought a PS13. I have two PS13s, and one of them is a very famous one, and the other one I'm kind of just doing my own way. And people are like, "Oh, you can't cut the arches, and you can't do this," and I'm like, "This is all we did for like 20 years was cut them up and put wide bodies on them and stuff." And now it's like, "Oh, keep the original wheels on and stuff like this." Is the most boring part of car culture to me is keeping them
Hmm.
stock and just old man polishing the super on the standard 5 spokes and stuff. And I know it's a novelty now to see them, but I don't know. I think it's gone the other way now, where we're turning into those old men in the park on a Sunday, polishing our cars. Right? To me, it was always about making them your own. So I think there's a level of that where car enthusiasts are split on whether I'm a car enthusiast or I'm an investor.
Hmm.
And I definitely want to be on the car enthusiast side, not the investment side.
Are y'all going to get the new Z cars in manual?
We are not getting the Z cars at all. So there you
Oh,
go. You know,
how about like
here's the
how about
crazy
the
one.
86s?
The 86s are in manual, but I don't know
Okay.
if I bought a Supra just before Christmas, so the new A90 Supra,
Mm-hmm.
and the new A90 Supra. I laugh because every time I tell someone, they're going to laugh. So it's so 93,000 euros. So what is that in
Oh my
dollars? That's about
God, a lot.
115 or $20,000 for the new
They're
Supra.
like
Yeah,
65 new here.
I'm fully aware, but that's our taxation here. It's that every car is that value. So,
Holy
um,
cow.
and then you go to like Denmark, and the car is like $180,000, and you're like, this is just the way it works. Like,
I hear if you go to like Singapore, I think it's Singapore or wherever, it's like 800% tax on the cars.
yeah,
So like
yeah,
a GTR, $100,000 GTR is like $800,000 or something like that.
it is like I said, it's all relative to where you are. But I have
Maybe it's
so
Hong Kong, but yeah, keep going.
so I have a Supra, one of three registered on the road in Ireland.
Hmm. Did you do it
Because
just because it's rare?
I did it, one, because it's rare, and I think in Ireland it's strange because on Irish registration. Two, it's actually, if I bought something else, it wouldn't be as special. But I also quite like the car because I actually was on Driftweek when we went to Florida afterwards, and I saw Titan Motorsport and Adams when I was like, I really like this car. Didn't really see them many of them, and they are rare. The strange here works for my channel because it's quite on point with all the JDM kind of stuff that we do. It's more interesting. I had a Porsche Cayman before, then everyone just thinks you're an asshole because you got a Porsche. So I was like, okay, I'll just try.
Hmm.
But I think that's the thing. It's like everything here is so overpriced. There's some figures now. The cars here are going for I've heard like recently an A86 here went for 50,000 euro, like sold for 50,000 euro, and
They used to
we're
be $500 and I didn't want them.
but the A86 is like the car in Ireland. That's the one. That's the golden car because it was
Why?
the only car that crossed between rallying and drifting. So everybody
Uh,
wants an A86. So A86s, you won't get a good one for less than 30,000 euro now in Ireland, and there is tons of them. They have a track day every year in Ireland where they
yeah.
have all the 86 guys come down, and it's the
Hmm.
biggest 86 meet in the world, including Japan,
Wow.
which is
You know, it's
mental.
I have this weird relationship with 86s that I used to have one that was like 2,000 pounds that was all carbon fiber and like, it's a drift one. Not
Yeah.
all carbon fiber, but like a lot of it. It was little slidey windows and stuff with a 4.7 ring gear or something like that. It was miserable to drive. It was hilarious. Um, it was kind of fun on track and stuff, but you go to Japan and all the old men come out with their Corollas that are like kind of ragged out and they're straight piped and they sound so loud you can't physically be around them. So they're buzzing around North Course, and North Course goes around the pits. So the pits are in the middle and it's just like abrasive where you can't, like, you have to hold your ears. They're so loud. So whenever I'm around Corollas, even at my own events, they're the absolute loudest cars there by far. They make no power. Like it's like for someone that's been around drifting for 20 years, it's been abusive. Same thing with like naturally aspirated four-cylinder cars at events. They always straight pipe them and they're so freaking loud. So anyways, I've just always hated being around Corollas.
But
Even
here
though I
it's
owned
like
one.
they're the Corolla, and then now the IS200 or the Altezza. That's like the most popular car because they're cheap to
Hmm.
run. So here we're taxed on the size of our engine. So
Oh.
what 1.6 car are you going to buy that can do a bit of drifting? Like there is none. So
Hmm.
the Corolla, and then the 2 liter would be like on top of that, and then like it's like a 350Z here is like $2,500 a year to put road tax on. So they didn't really sell very well here. Obviously, even though I think they're the best drift car ever made, the
Hmm.
350Z. Oh, but they're only here we have them imported from the UK with no plates on them. But the Corvette, like my Corvette, before I stripped it and made it a pro car, like even just to get it into the country from the UK was like $35,000 maybe just to get a stock LS3 Corvette automatic into the country. So we
Hmm.
pay a lot here. We were only discussing it today. So as much as Ireland is a brilliant place for brilliant people and great talented drifting, we have terrible weather. Our taxation is too high. Our fuel is too high. We've very little racetrack stuff, but we've still made the car scene work from that. So I think that against all that adversity, we've a great car scene that people are paying stupid money on insurance and tax just to have an import duty, just to have these cars. And we have an illegal tax in Ireland. I don't know if we spoke about this when we were in Driftweek, but basically the Irish government is not allowed to charge the tax on the cars, but the fine they receive from the European Union every year is less than what they make on taxing the cars. So it's pretty corrupt, but they still keep doing
Oh,
it. So
weird.
very weird. Yeah.
Um, is it worth staying in Ireland if you're going to run a YouTube channel and all these different things, or is it worth going somewhere else? Like you see Adam, and for the amount
Yeah.
of money he has invested, his compound was like $1.5 million or $1.3 million or something like that. It's this massive thing that you could run a business out of. Do you think about jumping ship?
I've thought about it more in the last year because
Mhm.
obviously when the pandemic came, you kind of see the world through a more independent view, I think, because you're not just going through the motions. Everybody stopped in the pandemic and went, huh, maybe you guys didn't, but we had to for like the
I'm
year.
Texan. We just kept doing everything. We didn't
Kept
care.
doing whatever you wanted. But here it was like everyone stopped. So everyone was like, honestly, it was a weird thing where like not only what we do, but everybody in every job kind of went, huh, is this what I want to be doing? Is this where I want to be? Am I just doing this because I've always done this or whatever? So I think we did the same. So I think what we found the balance was is that we like our home being here. It's obviously where our family are, our girlfriends, our wives, whatever, our families are here. But we will travel more because it's actually just as cost effective to travel and drift as it is to drift here or in the UK. So we were
Hmm.
like, we'll do a couple of trips a year and we'll bang out the content from then. And then because if we run a championship in Abu Dhabi. So we've got what, 4 of those, a drift week or two, 6 drift masters rounds. By the time you've done all that, you've done a lot of traveling. And
Hmm.
then UK, whatever. And I was like, well, then we just do our events here. So it just kind of rolls through the year. So as much as we want to build our projects here, and believe me, because I have 8 or 10 cars or whatever, I'm a bit like you, buying just rubbish everywhere and trying to make a justification for it along the way. I was
Yeah.
like, that's pretty much what I've done. But it's very heavy to text it here. But we make it work. As I said, I laugh every time I say the price of the Supra because I know I've paid 40,000 euro more than it should be worth.
Yeah.
So luckily I paid it on finance, so I don't have to pay it all at once because I'd really cry then.
Everybody always thinks that like seeing that Supra or seeing cars I buy or whatever, that they make sense in the channel and you make money off them. And I always try to tell people like, no, this is just me buying stupid stuff and like recording it.
There's
I'm not making money buying a car on my YouTube channel. There's no justification for that. Like I bought a
no,
circle track car because I'm an idiot.
I'm the same. I buy things. I was looking the other day at buying a. I wanted to buy a 1979 Monte Carlo because I wanted the same car that Denzel Washington drove in Training Day for no other reason than I just watched Training Day and I went, that car is really cool. So I'm on the internet checking up where would I get one. There's one in Luxembourg, and I'm like, maybe I'll have. And I'm going, that is literally the amount of thought I've put behind most of the cars that I own. It's just I thought about it. I went looking for one. This one happened to be there. I had some money. I bought it, and then when I get it, I'll go right. What's the content plan for this car after we bought it? So there is
Mm-hmm.
no sense to it. You know yourself, YouTube ad revenue doesn't make any money. It's
Mm-hmm.
the other parts of your business that do, and it's nice just to share your car. Like if you can even make it work a little bit, like sometimes we make it work a little bit, we can pay off some stuff with the YouTube channel and the merchandise and stuff. Then it's great. We get to justify having really stupid cars, but it's not a money maker by any means. Like that's literally where we waste all the money.
I need to get some of you guys to like give me a class on YouTube because I don't sell merch or do any of the other stuff that makes sense that people make money on. I just like take the ad revenue and just like host my events. I don't
Yeah,
know
no,
why I
that's
YouTube.
for
I
us.
just have fun with
Merchandise
it.
is like a big one, and sponsorship obviously is a big one as well because we do something quite different to everybody in Ireland and the UK. We put out content 5 or 6 times a week, not just 5 or 6 times a year. So that was a big
Hmm.
difference maker for us. But most of the money we've made, we just put it all back into the cars, and then the cars sit there and we say, hey, but the cars are worth this. And then, our financial accountants say, yeah, but you can't pay people in bits of cars. So I was like, yeah. So we make it work. And I've bought a lot of cars over the years, and so is the guys. They've got my habit from me now, buying absolute shit heaps and just saying, oh, it'll
Hmm.
be great when it's done. It's a real investment or whatever. So we're having fun with it. It makes the content work. I'm pretty happy that we have nice cars. But I think as another thing, a reason I bought a lot of cars was, I don't know if you've been feeling this, but I feel like I want to buy up a lot of them now because I don't want to pay €1 million for one of them in like 4 years when I want one back. That's why I bought an S15 maybe 4 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago, because I was like, I don't really want an S15 right now, but I certainly don't want to pay 40, 50,000 euro for one in like 2 years' time. So I'll
Yeah.
buy them while I can still afford them.
I had most of those cars a long time ago and got it out of my system. Like my
Yeah.
S15 had like an HKS turbo, and I got it from my buddy at MCR Factory. It was his car, and I had like DG5 coilovers and real bride seats, and like all that stuff. And I
Yeah.
paid old school Japanese prices of like 6 grand.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess like I got it out of my system, if you know what I mean. So I don't
Yeah.
lust after that stuff, because I mean I've probably had more than 80 S chassis. Um,
Jeez, 80.
so yeah, every 2 years I had this thing for like more than a decade. I would build myself like a new street one that was nice, all
Yeah.
done up and everything, like a street car with like a built motor. And then I would drive it around for like a couple weeks, and I'm like, God, I hate this car. Like, this is awful. Like, these are good drift cars, but they're not comfortable. I
Yeah.
would get pulled over in them or something like that because, anyways, you know what it's like. I just wasn't that excited, and I just wanted to drive around like a 5 Series BMW or something that comfortable that
Yeah.
I just got over it. But I
No,
also daily drive
I
a
get that.
military Humvee, so I don't mind being uncomfortable. It's just like with the race car stuff, I guess because they're so like I was always nervous driving around S chassis stuff as well, because you know how much they break.
They do. And I think for me, I have three S chassis at the minute. I think I'm more of a, I love the way they look when they're done right. I'm more of a
Mm-hmm.
appreciate the look. These are not going to be drift cars because they're just nice cars to just go to shows and drive around. Like some of them are on air and stuff. It's like the worst. It's just for
Mm-hmm.
looking cool. And I love looking at them in the garage. Where my drift cars are both American, because I know when I break things, I can just ring somebody in America and they still have it on the shelf and it's reasonably priced. So I was like, oh, there you go, no problem. So
Mm-hmm.
I have a Mustang and a Corvette, so I'm like, it's amazing how cheaper they are for me to run those cars in Ireland than the
Mm-hmm.
boys who run the RBs and 2Js in Ireland, because those parts have got so rare. So I like my S chassis stuff. I wanted a 15, the PS13, or what do you call it? The S13 Coupe, I suppose, what you would call it.
Mm-hmm.
So the S13 Coupe and the S15 are my two favorite Nissans.
Yeah.
So I want to build two like really nice ones and have them there, and like I'm really happy with that. And then I love my Corvette for drifting. I much prefer it than any of the S bodies or any of the, or because it's
They're so
cooler
much
here.
better.
It's so much better. It's so much more different here. Like nobody else has a Corvette in
Mm-hmm.
general, never mind a drift one. So it was
Mm-hmm.
so much easier for me to get sponsors and stuff with, I have Vaughn's old RTR and then I have that. And it's like easy for me to get sponsors because nobody even sees a Corvette or an S197 Mustang here. Like I don't think,
Mm-hmm.
pretty sure there isn't one on the road, you know?
Mm-hmm. All right,
So
my last question, because I have to go pick up a baby in just a minute.
cool.
Um, I always try and come up with a content plan. So like Driftweek 1, I just created recap videos and I collected all the drivers' content as well as my own, and I wanted to cover it like a big event. And I made like 6 episodes or something like that, or 7 episodes, one for each track day. I promoted the tracks, I promoted the drivers. I tried to think of it as an old school thing. I only came up with 7 videos. It was an insane amount of work because I had like 13,000 clips of media. Um, because I had everybody's GoPro and everybody's stuff, and it was very difficult to do. Drift Week 2, I think I did the same thing, but with that many more drivers, it only got worse. And all my content was old by the time it came out because I was doing a different thing than the drivers. So when Adam's content came out, people didn't want to watch mine necessarily but I mean, it's good because Adam already showed it, but I was still making mine. But it was a bit of just like masturbation because you're just doing it to do it at that point. And then
Yeah.
by 3 and 4, I started doing interviews and a lot of different types of creative content, some car reviews, looking at cars, like pit walks. The interviews are great because I think they're a lot more interesting sometimes than driving.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to come up, I was going to do car reviews of every car on the trip, the last one, but man, it just got so difficult for me to get all this stuff going. Do you come up with content plans like that, or are you just going to do the same type of recap videos? Because y'all kind of did vlogging.
Yeah, I think
And
what
you could
we'll do
create
is,
way more content coming up with a different plan. Sorry, go ahead.
I think that was one thing that we could do more videos if we were a bit more. I think it was strange because the trip was quite expensive to us, and then Josh and Adam had gone on their not their own money, so they obviously have to try and justify the trip. I think they overshot it and overproduced it to a certain extent because they were so afraid of not capturing something that they
Mm-hmm.
ended up overdoing it, getting too much footage and not getting it out really fast because it was just so much of it. Like, I mean, their Driftweek videos could have been 4 hours long every day. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something separate we'll do. I think we want to do a little bit more of the traveling, a bit more of the chats, a bit more of the conversational stuff, and the driving part will be kind of a backdrop to that. I think,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe it's just me personally, but driving is a lot more fun to do than to watch sometimes. Like if you watch someone driving for, you're not going to watch someone driving 700 laps of the track. It's just not the way it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the best thing is the conversation. If you can mix the travel, the conversation with a bit of humor and a little bit of track action, you've kind of got the whole feel of a day. I think you did a really good job on like banging out the videos, like as in every day there was a new video, but you were getting a unique perspective across each video. So that's what I thought was really good. Say when I did it with Forrest Wang, and then you could go to like, you know, Jordan from whatever. And it was always like a fun little topic that you were running with. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that works better maybe for you because that's the time you're free to actually do something is when the track isn't live essentially all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It's achieved.
that comes up well because I can shoot. God, people wouldn't understand how much we shoot. I would say I shot at least 60 hours of interviews on Driftweek.
Crazy.
You know, getting
Yeah.
there, doing Driftweek and coming back because I was shooting on the way, stopping in states and like shooting with 2F and things
Yeah.
like that. Um, and people are like, that's more than a work week and a half. And you're like, yeah, plus we're hosting the events, plus we're shooting other content. Like we also shot recap videos, but we didn't even make them because they would have been old. And I
Yeah.
just like, you know, I burn out on the editing process. So I still have quite a few videos I could make. But I mean, that means that with two video people plus myself shooting separately, I mean, we had more than 100 hours of content. Um, you know, like
It's
raw content or whatever.
yeah.
And then the edited portion that I released was probably 37 hours of content or something. I don't know.
Which
It's
is
just insane.
it's nuts. I mean, it
Yeah.
is nuts. And I think
And
gotta
I'd
be
like to do
careful.
more, but I need to do it in a way that makes sense and doesn't create more work for myself, that somebody
Yeah.
else is organically making it, because the like YouTube will consume an infinite amount of content. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And I
Sorry, go ahead.
think there's a lot to be said of sometimes shooting for the sake of shooting. We talk about this all the time where, you know, I would say the way we do YouTube videos now. So we were doing 3 videos a week
Mm-hmm.
up until we met Mike, who's Adam's videographer, and now we do 5 or 6 videos a week.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a key to how you shoot and edit that we didn't know because again, in Ireland, we never met anybody who did YouTube as a career. So we just
Mm-hmm.
had to figure it out ourselves. But when we went to Drift Week, we started figuring out that, hey, how come my videographer looks like he's editing all day and Adam LZ's videographer is just messing with his car and they make more videos than us? So how does all this work?
Yeah.
So we figured a lot of that stuff out, which was like you can overshoot. Like you can overshoot if you know 50% of it's going to be left on the cutting room floor, and you've got to remember that you've got to watch all that 50% to know what the good stuff is. Shoot it like you're going to edit it, and that's very much what we've been doing since, and it's worked really well. We're putting out so much more content, getting so much more views because we're putting out many more videos, and we're not staying at somewhere like 7 hours making a 20-minute video. We're in, we get it done, we're out, we get it edited in like 2 hours, out, finished, done. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the only way it's sustainable, I think, because otherwise you go crazy because you're like 24 hours a day trying to do uploads and downloads and blah blah blah. So I think we've found a little bit of a sweet spot. We want to try that now on the new Drift Week. That can we get a video out every night of what happened that day?
Mm-hmm.
And Brandon Wicknick can do it, but like obviously Josh is a professional videographer, so he's obviously got the talent to be able to do it every day, and it'll kill him.
Mm-hmm.
But he almost said it would be better because he thinks the reaction to the videos would be so much more live and so much more better. So we're going to try that.
Yeah.
But I said, from your perspective, it's difficult because you're hosting the event. I don't have to worry about the event when I'm making the content at your event. I don't
Hmm.
care how the event is going. I'm trying to figure out our stuff. So you have to worry about everybody and the travel and all the questions and try and get content done. I don't know how you do it.
Um, it's me editing most of the time too.
I'm also looking. I'm almost
Isn't
looking at
that
it going.
crazy?
I'm literally looking at it going. I like when I watch somebody who works hard and I'm like, I don't feel so bad now.
Yeah.
Or I can turn around to my guys and go, well, Aaron's doing like 7 videos this week. It's like, and he's running the event. So you give me a bit of leverage there
Yeah.
as well.
Um, I was gonna say last parting thought is I used to take at least 60 hours to do each video in my channel up until 2000 and I don't know, maybe about 2 years ago. And I started to try and cut that down. Actually, probably up until a year ago, I was still doing that. And I was just trying to force it and kill myself. Sometimes I'd edit for 20 hours a day if it was a project I liked. And like if I did a Japan trip, I would put all 3 weeks of content in one video. And, it'd be a 3.5 hour video. And I wasn't breaking it up because I just thought that was just goofy fun. It wasn't until I also hung out with Adam, I was like, oh my God, I'm doing this so wrong. I'm just killing myself.
I feel like we met him and we felt like, like you're cutting the lawn with a scissors and he
Yeah.
just comes along with the ride on and you're like, why were we doing this? So it does help, but that's a good thing about
Yeah.
collaboration and meeting people is that you understand that soon.
One more thought about that same thing. Maybe you haven't been around Hoonigan when they shoot, or maybe you have been around people like this. I was around Hoonigan a few years ago, maybe like 4 years ago, and I didn't realize they shot all of their content in one day a week. So
I know, yeah, I heard that as well.
they would do everything in one day and they'd go change outfits and do everything. And I'm sitting here just watching. I'm like, holy crap. And they're like, yeah, but we pay everybody to like our staff and stuff. So we want to get everything done in one day. So there's no distractions, even though people doing burnouts 7 days a week here, doing this and
Yeah.
that. They're like, this is a business. We don't give a crap about fun. They're like, get all that stuff out of here. Like we are working. And I was just like blown away because they put on such a good persona that everything's laid back and nonchalant, but
Yeah.
like those dudes are there to work and they're there to crank out. They literally have other teams of drivers that are like bringing in cars lined up outside their gates with appointment times. They slide in somebody, they do burnouts, they do everything. They do it in a very confined space. So it's very easy. Everybody has to come to them
Yeah.
on the same day so that they're not setting up and breaking down every day, if you know what I mean. They crank it out. And I realized that they created a formula where you could knock things out without very much effort in a repeatable fashion and your audience would get consistency and stuff, and like it's genius. Hoonigan just like murdered that when they did that, like the whole holistic thing, because we're trying to do completely different things. Like if you're going to go vlog and you're like, I have to go to the track today, fix my car tomorrow in a different location, transport to a different like city to do the next video, and then work on like every one of your videos requires 6 hours of traveling,
Yeah.
like all these different things. It's crazy.
And that's what I said. I think like Hoonigan and Adam's compound especially have inspired me to say that it would seem crazy to build my own, but I'm like, look at the cost saving compared to traveling every day of the week to go to somebody who's 3 hours away, 3 hours back, and that's 6 hours where nobody's really doing anything except traveling. So there's an opportunity. I mean, I'm an opportunist, I would say, and I would say I'm also very optimistic that would be great for content. But I think people have no problem. It's like I said, somebody has no problem traveling to you because it's only one day every 6 months they might come to see you. But if you're traveling every single day to see them, that's crazy. So I think, yeah, they have it. Those boys nailed it. We're just picking up the pieces now, figuring out how they did it and trying to emulate it a small bit, but with our own twist, obviously.
All right. Well, I think it's time for me to go, and I'm sure you probably need to go to bed or something since you're on the other side of the world. Thank you so much for taking the time. I will see you at Driftweek 5 on April 15th because you're just going to fly in and pick up your car, and it's going to be so easy. I
Bougie,
always
yeah.
enjoy talking to you too, so thank you so much.
No problem at all, Aaron. Good to talk to you again, man.
All right. Bye.